Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here with all of you this evening. I'm Dan Warner, the founder and CEO of ChaiTech. ChaiTech is an accelerator program and membership whereby we unite, uplift, and upskill Jewish founders. We are here tonight with a really incredible leader, an inspiring mentor, and advisor to me, my team, and our founders. Brad Feld, the founder of uh, Techstars and the co-founder of Foundry VC. He's written this incredible book called Give First, which is effectively a Bible as far as I'm concerned in terms of how to act, how to give, and how to really show up in a mentorship and menteeship relationship. So without further ado, before I introduce Brad, I'm really excited to introduce Andrew Levy, the executive director of the Prosserman JCC and the Schwartz Reisman Center.
Thanks, Daniel, and good evening, everyone. I'm Andrew Levy, the Executive Director of the Prosserman JCC and Schwartz Reisman Center, and I'm just so excited to have you all here with us this evening. ChaiTech came about as a partnership with the JCC and the Schulich School of Business through a transformative investment from the Ontario government, which enables Jewish founders from across our province to access world-class accelerator mentorship and community programming. The support that we've received from them has really allowed us to open the doors to investors and clients and partners who just believe in the power of Jewish innovation. And what began here in Toronto as a vision of something that builds community has really turned into a transformative movement. I'm so happy here tonight to be able to welcome friends from the Miami Beach JCC, the David Posnack JCC in Davie, Florida, the Solway JCC in Ottawa, and Montreal Federation CJ. Each of your communities represents a new chapter in the story of Jewish innovation. It connects entrepreneurs to investors, to mentors, to change makers across borders. And for us, our vision is just really clear. We want to have Jewish startups connected to one another through community, creating a strong ecosystem of entrepreneurs who are dedicated not only to building better businesses, but building better Jewish life. And that's what Give First is all about. Brad Feld's philosophy, helping others without expecting anything in return, is just at the core of who we are as people. It's chesed, it's kindness, right? It's eravut, it's mutual responsibility. And it's tikkun olam, it's repairing the world through our actions. So as we navigate these challenging times when anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are rising across North America, and these values just matter more than ever. So by giving first, by mentoring, by sharing, by supporting each other, we're not only strengthening our startups, we're strengthening ourselves and we're strengthening our communities. And it's with that spirit of collaboration that makes me just so excited for this program tonight. So it's my pleasure now to hand things back to Daniel to lead today's fireside conversation with our incredible guest of honor, Brad Feld, co-founder of Techstars and Foundry VC. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciate your friendship, your partnership, and of course, your mentorship for me, our team, and our participants. Tonight, we're very excited to be joined by one of the world's most influential venture capitalists, Brad Feld, the co-founder of Techstars and Foundry Group, as I mentioned at the top of the meeting. For more than 30 years, Brad has helped shape startup ecosystems globally, starting in Boulder, Colorado, mentoring founders, investing in hundreds and hundreds of startups, pioneering Give First, building startup communities, and this incredible philosophy that has defined not only Techstars, but has really made an indelible mark on the ChaiTech program. And as Andrew mentioned, we've grown from being a Toronto-based program to now creating opportunities right across North America. Brad has inspired us not only through Give First and his impact at Techstars, but he's also the author of Venture Deals and Startup Communities, two of the most read books in venture capital and startups. So please join me in welcoming a true ecosystem builder and lifelong learner, Brad Feld. Brad, thank you for joining us. It's a real pleasure.
It's a delight to be here. And Andrew, there's a lovely description of so many things that values I hold dearly. So thank you.
So why don't we start there? This is going to be a bit of a different fireside because we certainly want to dig deep into Give First and touch on your other books. But maybe you can share with us, Brad, about your experience, after October 7th as a leader, as a Jewish leader, someone was in Boulder, Colorado, still is in Boulder, Colorado, and has witnessed the hatred that our community has faced. How has it impacted you personally and as a Jewish business leader?
A couple of things to start with. It's been deeply unsettling. I grew up in Dallas, Texas. When I was growing up in Dallas, I definitely had the experience of being part of what was on an absolute basis, a very small Jewish community in a city. I was in a high school of 2,000 kids, public high school, and 4 of us were Jewish. And so, we were, teased and made fun of for all the things that kids get teased and made fun of for as Jewish kids. But I hadn't, you don't really process it as a kid. At least I didn't process it as a kid. As an adult, I would say I would encounter anti-Semitism and Jewish hatred periodically. And occasionally I would come up in professional environments, but more often it was kind of gratuitous or random. And, in the places that I lived, which were after Dallas, first Boston, and then Colorado, it never really hit me front and center. I had a lot of friends who were Israeli. I had a lot of friends who were Israeli-American Jews. I was on a couple of boards with companies that were founded by immigrants from Israel who were Jewish, who had served in the military, who had friends still in Israel in the military, and I had co-investments with some Israeli VCs over the years. And I think, as with many, October 7th just totally stunned me. It was, for me individually, in a lot of ways, a similar kind of moment to what 9/11 was in the United States. Just socially horrifying, culturally horrifying, sort of inconceivable to me that at this time in our species evolution, that was, it was so front and center. And then from it, as I tried to process it living in Colorado, I think probably everybody in this call is familiar with what happened in Boulder during one of the Run for Your Lives march. My condo in downtown Boulder, where my wife Amy and I were, is 200 yards away from where the firebombing happened. And we had just walked through that area an hour earlier, 30 minutes earlier. We had brunch sort of down the block, and that's how we walked home. And it was absolutely a moment of a terrifying moment for us personally. You're in your house and you hear a siren. Okay, we hear sirens. You hear a second siren. Okay, you hear a second siren. By the time you hear the 5th siren, you go to the window to look out what's going on. And it turns out, one person from that experience died. It turns out, she was an 82-year-old grandma. That's sort of your classic Jewish grandma. Her son was the college roommate of one of my best friends in Seattle. And I hadn't put those together till I'm at dinner with my friend. And just trying to unpack these emotions, which range from, at one end, just anger, at the other end, despondence, and trying to square it with the world that we're in today has been a struggle. That said, I'm proud of being Jewish. I am glad that the language separation now exists between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. I think most people in the United States are still very confused about the dynamics around it. I went to MIT, along with many other people at MIT who are Jewish, are quite upset with the administration's response to some of the things that happened, especially at the sort of peak of the struggles around the Israeli-Palestinian dynamic with students. And so all of these things, again, are very, very confusing and very difficult for me personally. And frankly, one of the motive forces for getting involved with Dan and ChaiTech is this idea that as a community, and community is something that's been at the core of everything I've done over the last 40 years in business. From my very first company that I started right out of college to all of the work that I've done around the world with the notion of startup communities and the assertion that every city in the world, that had at least 100,000 people should have a vibrant startup community. Like that concept, which I've been advocating for a long time, is not just a physical geographic community, but cuts across lots of other values. And of course, as a successful Jewish entrepreneur, of which there are many worldwide, the idea that as a community, we can really help support each other, but also model behavior, hopefully for others that look at that behavior and say, okay, I understand this is better behavior than blah.
I think that certainly resonates. Like we do what we can to make the world a better place and help one another, which I think was certainly an underlying ethos of Give First, which was an incredible book that we've had the pleasure of gifting to all of our founders and mentors. And maybe I'll segue from the discussion about your experience post October 7th, which many of us share. Being based in Toronto, it's incredibly divisive where my kids have faced anti-Semitism head on 4 times, which I never did growing up. Many of us who are parents on this call and more widely across North America, we just simply want our kids to grow up as safely as we did. And I think that the more that we can lean in on each other and support each other, especially entrepreneurially, because many of the challenges that we each face are it's not the first time that someone has faced them, which I know is a core tenet of Techstars through the manifesto, which I understand has some ties to some rabbanim or rabbis from back in the day, which I'd love to touch on. But one quote really stuck with me from early on, and maybe I'll go chronological, but happy to take your lead. And I'm going to pull up one of the quotes that I read. But it went back to something to the extent like, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And I think that it was tied to an early story of yours when you were dealing with some pretty tough challenges with your mentor and from what I understand, co-founder Len Fassler. I think you said, and I have it here now, they can't kill you, they can't eat you, we'll get through it. And I think that resonates, as a community, although there have been some tragedies, as you just mentioned. So maybe it's a bit more dire than startup life, but let's just focus on startup life. When you're early stage, and many of the startups that we support are pre-seed, and some are seed, when it feels like the sky is falling and everything's a priority and you're up against the clock, how do you recommend that startup founders recenter themselves and really just focus on what matters and support their teams in the right way forward?
So Len's quote, which I'll just repeat, which happened at a moment in time for me that a company we had co-founded, Len was the co-chair of a company that bought my first company, which is how we met, but we went on to do some companies together. He passed a few years ago. It was at a depth of misery during the collapse of the internet bubble. And, for people who remember that or were involved in tech companies then, it was a brutal, brutal time for companies that a short time earlier, a year or less, had been incredibly successful, or at least appeared incredibly successful. And the company that Len and I had co-founded had gone public, had a market cap that was around $3 billion when, $1 billion was a lot of money. Today, the $3 billion market cap is still meaningful, but, then it was really meaningful. And among other things, the business was falling apart. We mastered, that company, which was called Interliant, mastered the art of losing $5 million a month. We were extraordinary at that. We could do that month after month without fail. And when all of a sudden capital wasn't as available, we had to try to get profitable. And it was very, very hard and very painful. And we spent a lot of time together, and in this sort of very despondent morning that I talk about in the very beginning of this book, Len, who's now in his 70s at the time, who didn't need to be doing any of this. Like, there was no reason for him to be getting up and going to this battle every day that we had to try to keep this company alive. Every time I would say, "I'm sorry, Len, for dragging you into this thing," he'd say, "I chose to be part of this. Like, it sucks, but I chose to be part of this." It was a morning that I'm sure I looked miserable. I was exhausted and just couldn't kind of get into gear. And he said, "Come on, Brad, they can't kill you and they can't eat you." And his reframing for me was basically some Len version of, yeah, it's a really shitty time right now and startups are really hard, but there's a lot of other harder things in life. And, there are things in life where they can kill you. And there are for sure animals that will eat you if you get in their way. And the moment was powerful for me because it was a combination of like, okay, just persevere, combined with some version of like, we've committed to doing this. Let's get after what we committed to doing and do the best job we can at it. Interestingly, when I think about a founder today in 2025, and I know many, many, many founders, a long list on a spectrum from extremely successful to not successful at all, from a business and financial perspective. And interestingly, some of the people that I would say would be externally categorized as not successful financially, I think would view themselves as very successful in terms of their life experience and how they've contributed to whatever they've done. So financial success isn't the only definition of success. On that spectrum, anyone, even the really successful ones who are creating companies, go through this abject challenge that's continuous of how difficult it is. I was on a board call earlier with a company that, if you looked at what was going on 6 months ago, the momentum behind the company was great. And they made a decision to go after something about 3 months ago that, as a result of something completely exogenous to their business, nothing to do with the strategic decision, which, by the way, was a good strategic decision, ended up putting some real distress on the business. It's a matter of 3 months, not 3 years. Like, this stuff changes quickly. And for founders, I think that perseverance, that commitment, that willingness to get up in the morning and recognize that they can't kill you and they can't eat you, but you got work to do. And some days the work's fun and easy and straightforward, and some days it just sucks. That's part of being a founder.
What are some of the habits that you see founders implement that lead up to the resilience and the more positive outlook? Because a lot of days are incredibly challenging, but you look over the horizon, longer term, you're chasing a vision and you're trying to make an impact. So what are those small morning, afternoon, maybe even evening habits that founders here can implement that you recommend to help us on the right track?
Yeah, well, there's a big one, and it's high level, and I think it's true not just as a founder, but in life and relationships, is start by knowing yourself. And I think it's something that so many humans don't do, and so many adults don't explore. You get to a certain place, especially when you've had some success, and you don't take a moment to try to understand what matters next, what you really care about. And it's easy for us to get stuck in all the cliches of, well, family is the most important thing, or, I need to be connected to my community, and say it, but not like feel it or live it. It doesn't matter what your religious tradition or, frankly, your philosophical tradition is. We're all individuals as a species. Each of us is a different collection of chemicals, and the chemicals mix in different ways, and the things that impacted us are different. So, like, start by knowing yourself. And I'm about to turn 60, but I'm still learning about myself. I think that's part of the fun of being a human being and being alive, is the opportunity to continue to explore and understand what matters to you based on what's going on and the different things you have to deal with, whether it's really far away from you or right in your face. Tactically, I think if you view that as important, recognizing that even in a world that is extremely intense, fast moving, changing all the time, figuring out how to calibrate your environment so that you can be effective. I don't want to say productive. I didn't say successful, just effective. And for me, and I've talked very publicly about some of my struggles with depression over the years, it took a long time to really understand it. But for me, physiological health is really critical. If I'm tired, I'm not very effective. If I allow myself to be worn out over a long period of time and don't change my behavior, I get depressed. It's not just burnout, it's just physiological exhaustion. So for me, making sure I have some time for me each day is critical. And I can have stretches of days where I don't have enough, but a couple of days is fine. But by the time I get to the weekend, if I don't carve some time out for myself and I just kind of keep going, I'm going to have a problem the next week. I started a thing. I'm not a practicing Jew from a religious tradition perspective. I haven't been for a long time. I grew up Reform, and notwithstanding Len calling me every on the high holy days and saying, "Are you coming to temple today?" And we'd have a cute moment about it when I tried to explain to him that my temple was the mountains of Colorado. I decided a long time ago to start doing what I call digital Sabbath. So I don't work on Saturdays. And I view it as a really powerful part of the Jewish tradition, which is to have time from Friday night sundown to, Saturday night sunset. And for me, in a lot of ways, it carries on until Sunday morning, because by the time you get to Saturday night, you don't really feel like doing any work. And again, just creating some space. Now, not everybody needs that. It's different for everyone. So it's not prescriptive. This is part of understanding yourself. Another tactic for me that's super critical, post-COVID, pre-COVID, I traveled constantly. I was probably on the road 75% of the time. Post-COVID, I don't travel very much at all. I do a lot of this. I've been married for 32 years, together for 35 years, to a woman named Amy Batchelor. We don't have kids, but it turns out that, while COVID was tragic in many ways, the gift of COVID for us of not traveling was we got to spend 24 hours a day together for a long time. And we realized we really like to be together all the time. And we began starting our mornings off with something that's a tradition now called morning coffee. And we don't get up at the same time. Whoever gets up second, which is usually me, the other person stops. We have a cup of coffee together for 15 to 30 minutes. And we don't really have an agenda. Sometimes we talk about something specific. Sometimes we just sort of hang out together. Sometimes we talk about the day ahead, or we talk about something that's popped up. But we just sort of ground ourselves in our reality as a couple for 15 to 30 minutes before the day begins. That's been an incredibly powerful starting point. And, you watch TV sitcoms or TV shows with families, and, the kids running around and the partners like trying to get shit out the door and stuff like that. And like compare that to the moment that's different, of saying, what, even if it's 5 minutes, I'm just going to be with this person I was put on this planet to be with. I'm going to just have a few moments and calibrate before the madness of my day begins.
I think those two examples are really important, because the days, the weeks, the months, they get away from us, and the people that we care about, as well as ourselves, get older, and it's very fleeting. And I appreciate what you shared about a digital Sabbath. I know many people who, of course, are part of the tribe, but some that are not, that just recognize it for the opportunity to really unplug. And it's so important these days. Like, there's no doubt in my mind, I'm addicted to the computer in my hand, like many people, and you need to really control your pace. So I really appreciate those two examples immensely. I have two questions that come to mind, and I definitely want to talk about the book. But one is with regards to, creating these moments and these the quality time with the people in your life. When you're building a fund or you're building a startup, the pace is almost indescribable. And how would you recommend, keeping the co-founder of your life actively engaged with what you're doing and how you're doing it and how you're feeling. I think many of us as founders find that we don't really have many people to talk to. Can't really talk to your team, can't talk to the people on your cap table. Opening up to your co-founders can be challenging. So what have you found to be the best way to stay in alignment with your partner in life, and also an extent to that, the partners or co-founders that you have in your business, because things are going to get tough. It's inevitable. So how would you recommend navigating that with your business co-founders and your life co-founder?
I'll give you two hard-earned and hard figured out tools on my part. And I'll start with your life partner. And if you have kids, your kids. When you're a founder or a CEO, especially a CEO founder, but also a founder of a company, often you're the center of the universe. And this is why I say, especially for the CEO founder, you're really the center of your universe in the context of the company. It doesn't matter what kind of a manager you are, whether you're a lead from the front or lead from the rear. It doesn't really matter what your style is. Amy and I had this long-term joke that came from when George Bush was president, which is being the decider. There was something he said, "I'm the decider." And, when you're the CEO, you're the decider, ultimately. When you come home and walk through the door to your house, you are not the center of the universe. And it took me a long time to understand how to relate to walking through the door to my house after work, or walking out of my office, where I've been for the last 6 or 7 hours today, because I've been on calls all day. And when I finish and leave and go back to spend time with Amy, she might ask me about my day, but if I show up as though I'm the center of the universe, that's not a healthy way to behave. The other part of it, which I think is so critical, and it's often effective as in leadership, but it's less easy in your personal life when you're a founder, is to have your words and your actions match up. And the example I'd give there is, it took me a long time to realize that I would say to Amy that she's the most important person in my life. And then in the middle of dinner, the phone would ring, and this is before caller ID, and I'd pick up the phone. Or I'd be 30 minutes late to dinner because just one more email, or I couldn't get out of the meeting, or I couldn't whatever. Like the commitment to your life partner, especially if you view them as the most important thing in your life, is to have your words and your actions match up. And if you don't view your life partner as the most important thing in your life, and your work is more important to you than your life partner, that's interesting. I'm not going to make a judgment about it, but that's something worth exploring, both yourself and with your partner, to make sure you're aligned. So that's a bucket. The other thing, when I look at my regrets in work contexts about interacting with partners, interacting with co-founders, interacting with CEOs that I work with, I don't regret any of the failure that I've had. Failure is part of the process. I mean, creating a company is an endless series of hypotheses. You run experiments. Most experiments fail. You learn from the experiment, you create a new hypothesis, run another experiment. When it eventually works, do more of it, but you have to continue to test and experiment. That's the essence of it. So in the entrepreneurial journey, as with many things in life, there's a lot of things that don't work. My regrets are when I'm passively avoidant, when I passively avoid an issue. And one of the ways I describe that to people as a separation from active avoidance, and I like to be blunt about it in terms of, I try to use a harsh example. Active avoidance is, I will point to the corner of the room and say, in the corner of the room over there is a pile of shit. And I don't know how the pile of shit got there, but I'm not going to do anything about it. If y'all don't want the pile of shit there, you should do something about it. That's active avoidance. Passive avoidance is you notice it and you just don't say anything about it. And you know that it's going to be a problem. It's going to start to get stinky and it's going to start to, irritate everybody, but you just kind of don't do anything about it. All my regrets have been passive avoidance. And there have been plenty of conflicts that I've had, I would say I've been actively avoidant. That's not my problem. I am not going to do something about that. I have a lot of things I take responsibility for, but not that one. But in situations where I'm passive avoidant, I know I got to do something about it, or I got to tell somebody else I'm not going to do something about it. It's their problem. And when I haven't, downstream, I've always regretted those things. I've always regretted what happened. So those are the two suggestions. One is don't show up as the center of the universe with your life partner, with your family. Recognize that you're not. And try to make sure that your words and your actions link up so that they don't feel like there's a disconnect between them as you're saying something to try to make them feel like they're important to you, but then not behaving that way. And on the other side, when you see an issue, decide whether you're going to be active about it or not. And whether you're going to do something about it and take responsibility or not. And if you're not, be explicit with the rest of your team. Not going to do anything about it, but if you think it's important, you should do something about it.
I very much appreciate that, Brad. Thank you so much. I want to ask you about the definition of give first. I think that many of us have grown up in a community where, mutual helpfulness, or tikkun olam, repairing the world, is a value that we all hold dear. I think we largely are raised, whether you go to temple or not, with the outlook that, let's leave the world and our community better than where we found it. And I think that with Give First, I think that really nails it. I think that having a mentor and being able to ask questions, as I alluded to someone who genuinely wants to see you succeed and achieve your purpose, I think it really resonates. So can you give us the definition in your words about Give First, and really how it came about and how it really threads through all the incredible Techstars accelerator programs, which I think number well over 50. You probably have an updated number for me, but it really is incredible how it's grown and the impact that it's had.
So the definition is simple and not profound, but has a couple of nuances in it that are important. The definition is that you're willing to put energy into a system without knowing what you're going to get back. However, it's not altruism. You do expect to get something back. You just don't know when, from whom, over what time period, or in what form. It's not profound because, you can say, it sounds like karma. But it really has a couple of pieces integrated into it that I think in 2025 are particularly important in terms of leadership. One is that it's non-transactional. You're willing to engage without defining upfront what the transactional activity is. Next, it's positive sum. And I separate this from zero sum very deliberately. Zero sum is somebody gets +8 and the other person gets -8, and it's equals to 0. And my view is positive sum is a much better way to live life, where both parties or all parties benefit, just in unequal amounts. One person might get X and the other person might get Y, but they're both positive numbers. And so positive sum experience. And then the last is that they're multi-turn versus single turn. You're not viewing the engagement with the system as a one-time thing. You're viewing it as a multiple time thing over a long period of time. So the linkage of these three things is important. Where the phrase came from, for me, was in a book I wrote in 2012 called Startup Communities, which defined how to think about startup communities as a construct. Up to that point, the phrase didn't exist. Nobody ever had referred to something as a startup community. I wanted to distinguish a startup community from what everybody else was calling these things, which could have been entrepreneurial ecosystem or innovation cluster, research this or that. And I wanted to define a thing which had one goal. And the system or the community had one goal, which was to help founders be successful in a city. And that was the starting point for Startup Community. I had this one paragraph in the book. It was just a small section. It's kind of a throwaway that said, give before you get. And I defined pretty close to the definition I just gave you. It turns out in a world of Twitter of 140 characters, hashtag give before you get uses up a bunch of them. So a guy named Greg Cochran at Techstars modified it and started hashtagging things with hashtag give first. And so it became a mantra. And I'll sort of end with the dynamic of it's very important to recognize that give first is a philosophy, not a religion. In religious traditions, there are a set of rules and you follow the rules. And, one of my most favorite rules in the Jewish religious tradition is to question the rules. When I was 10 years old and I started challenging my rabbi, whose name was Rabbi Ben-Parad, instead of like saying to me, shut up and sit in the corner, Brad, he like sat down with me and let me challenge what I was saying, or what he was saying. And then, had a conversation with me. And, I'd like to think that even as a 10-year-old, I made him think about some stuff that he had thought about before. And, there's plenty of religious traditions where that's not one of the parts of the religious tradition, but they're a set of rules. A philosophy is a set of ideas to incorporate into your life. And of course, in Judaism, there are a lot of philosophical tenets of Judaism. I mean, the essence of the exploration of the Talmud is a combination of looking at rules and trying to explore them philosophically. So much of the Jewish traditions have come from philosophical inquiry. But for me, in the context of Give First, I very much didn't want to create a set of rules. And as mentorship, which intersects tightly with this philosophy, same thing. I had observed through the first 3 or 4 years of Techstars and all the mentorship that was now happening across the different programs that we were running in 2007 to 2010, lots of examples of effective mentorship, but also lots of examples of ineffective mentorship. And I participated as a mentor in lots of situations where I was effective and plenty where I wasn't effective. And what David Cohen, who's CEO of Techstars, but the co-founder with me, came up with a little help from me and a couple of other people, was 18 bullet points that were not rules. If you follow these 18 rules, you're a good mentor. And, like in hindsight, instead of calling it the Techstars Mentor Manifesto, it would have been fun to call it the Techstars Talmud or something like that. Like it was just a set of ideas to challenge and to play around with and to, try to think about in the context of effective mentorship. And so I sort of end with that is Give First is not, and you must live your life this way. Give First is not, and if you do these things, then you are a good person. It's a set of ideas to incorporate into what you do and how you do it. And the same thing with things like the Techstars Mentor Manifesto. It's a set of ideas to encourage you to think about what's effective and incorporate what you think is effective into what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Thank you for sharing. And I was smiling extra wide when you were talking about your discussions with your rabbi as a little guy, because I think that's one of my favorite parts of our religion is that we are endlessly curious, and we're, over the years, and I can't imagine how many thousands of books were written about, the Torah and the lessons that different people gleaned, and they were all valid, and they debated probably until their heads almost popped off, and then they had lunch together. And, I honestly think that if we can bring back that commitment to dialogue and to debate around the good book and what we're all facing as a community right now. And I think that there's Jewish community members and allies from right across Canada and the US, and to my LA friends here, go Blue Jays. That I think that that's how we get through anything, whether you're trying to climb the hill and build a global company or ultimately overcome community challenges like the ones that we face. So I appreciate you sharing that very much, because I do think that that's the best way for anyone to learn is to be able to ask questions and to be able to probe, usually politely, to get to the right answer. And I think some of my favorite days are when the right answer comes to me through either our research, Brad, you mentioned the scientific approach, or from a team member, because it shows how much they care about the problems that we're trying to solve. So I think that the give first ethos, both for mentorship, relationship, but also in a team, can really be so transformative. I want to ask you, and we have what I think is a really incredible EIR mentorship program within ChaiTech. The idea of being Socratic, which I think is the first tenet, if I recall. So it's very easy, and I probably do it a lot, of like saying, here's what I did. But to be able to like really coach someone and effectively get the answer, that they arrive at the answer, and you're just kind of guiding them. Can you share any advice for mentors who really want to get to that point of just, doing no harm, but just really helping the founder forward?
So one of the things that I have like this instinctive reaction, negative reaction to, it sends me back to my 14-year-old self, which is when somebody says to me, you should. Like the second somebody does that, I want to do the exact opposite. Right? It just sets me off. And when I was in my early 20s, and I was starting to find my peers as other entrepreneurs, I got involved in an organization that was very, when I got involved in it, I was about the 100th person. It's now 25,000 people around the world. It's called the Entrepreneurs Organization. At the time, it was called Young Entrepreneurs Organization. And it had a lot of activity in Canada. So actually, it was sort of the starting origin story of it was a combination of some Canadians and some folks in the U.S. that decided to start this organization. There's a program that's also, some people may be familiar with, Young Presidents Organization, and YEO is modeled after YPO. It's kind of a different set of qualifications. And it has a program called Forum, where once a month, the same group of 10 or so people would get together, your forum group. It was confidential. And one person presented a problem, and there was a very deliberate process that you went through in exploring the problem to try to help the person, guide them to a better understanding of the root cause of the problem. And in that was this notion of asking questions and telling stories from your own experience, but not telling the person what they should do. Not creating the situation where the person is having to then calibrate what you're saying as judgment against what their decision is. And an important thing as a mentor to realize is that you're just providing data to the mentee. The mentee has to make their own decision. And so one of the interesting things about being Socratic is this notion of asking questions to try to understand the root cause of the problem better, because the first thing most people tell you is not the root cause. They tell you some level, and like you want to get to what's the root cause versus the surface level part of the problem. And as part of that, you're also trying to guide them through, not to an answer necessarily, but guide them in a productive way. And a lot of what can guide them is your own stories, your own experience, and talking from your own experience. And there's a big difference between saying you should and saying, I had this experience. It might not be directly applicable, but there's something in it that might be useful to learn from that looks like this. And that was a little formal, but you get the idea, I presume, that, this notion of interacting around stories of your own experience. And those first person experiences are so much more useful than the observation that you make of what somebody else did. Because your observation of what somebody else did might or might not be correct. Because of course, that observation is just your own view of what somebody else did. So if you link these two things together, we all know the person that asks a bunch of questions, whether it's in a board meeting or an interview or something, where the questions don't lead anywhere. It's just a bunch of random questions, especially in the context of entrepreneurship or the boardroom or interaction with a mentee. That's not helpful. You want it to lead somewhere. You want to get to the root cause, and you want to not judgmentally tell the person the answer, but you want to guide them towards something that you think is additive and you think is productive. And you can do that through storytelling.
Two of the other tenets that you had recommended in the book One is to be direct or to be candid, and the other is to be authentic, to practice what you preach. Would you mind going a bit deeper on both of those elements? Certainly, when a mentor is not acting in the way that they're recommending or hasn't acted in the way that they recommend, it comes across as inauthentic. And I, maybe like some other founders here, have been a part of programs where they don't give you the straight goods, which really hurts you in the long run, as opposed to just getting the honest advice that you need at this moment in time. So I would love your perspective on both of those elements, please.
I used to use a phrase that I don't use very often anymore, but I've never come up with a better phrase for it. So I'll describe it. And what's important is not the phrase, but what the phrase implies. The phrase is brutal honesty delivered kindly. And for me, what that meant was to always try hard to be direct about what I was thinking, but to do it in a way that was kind. Not in an artificially, manipulative way. I think probably people know you deliver like a compliment and then you deliver the bad news and then another compliment. And I've heard that referred to as the shit sandwich, No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying, look, you think something, put it out there. This is my thought. This is my opinion. This is my hypothesis. I don't know if it's true or not, but this is what I observe. But to do it in a way that's not demeaning, that's not harsh, that's not antagonistic, that doesn't belittle the other person. So I think the style in which you're direct matters. And especially in a mentor-mentee situation, or a situation where you're building a relationship, doing it in a way that's true to yourself, but responsive to the context is important. I think that's linked to being authentic. And I'll use a good example. It's well known. I've talked publicly for a long time. I swear. I don't subscribe to the school of somebody swears they're lowering themselves, or they're not taken seriously, or they're not being respectful. I just parts of speech, the way that I think about it, and I use different words for emphasis. If I am in a situation where I don't talk the way I normally talk, I'm not being authentic. If I don't engage with someone in a consistent way, so in one meeting I'm very formal, another meeting I'm very casual, that's jarring. And it doesn't have to be the same meeting with them. It could be the different contexts of the different interactions. I think behavioral norms matter a lot here. If you're advising somebody that you work with, or emphasizing to them the importance of reliability and consistency in their communication, and then you, as the mentor, ghost that person, or are late to meetings, or when you show up at meetings, you're on your phone the whole time, you're modeling behavior that's completely inconsistent with what you're saying. So I think those things are linked together, which is your behavior. It's not that somebody's judging you as a mentor on your behavior. Your behavior should be internally consistent with how you present yourself in public and in private. And I think that there's some people who use that as an excuse. Oh, well, that's just the way that person is. Well, okay, so that person's a cruel asshole. I don't want anything to do with that. That's fine. If the person's a cruel asshole, okay. You know what you're getting. That's better than the person, has a shellac or pania of not being a cruel asshole, and then is just a cruel asshole. The other end of the spectrum, the person who, is a really gentle, generous, thoughtful person, but feels the need to present themselves as, a tough, harsh, aggressive, whatever. Like those things don't fit. And I think when you're trying to build an authentic relationship with someone, the more inconsistent you are in that way, the harder it is to be effective.
I appreciate you sharing. We're getting a lot of audience questions, so I'm going to ask you one more, and then we'll spend maybe a couple minutes on them. One of the things in the book that I found particularly interesting and I'm really aiming to internalize it, is that mentorship is a two-way street, which seems really interesting when you are being awarded or granted this opportunity to like engage and learn from someone that is at the very least a few steps ahead of you. Hopefully remember their footsteps, but by and large, you described it as a two-way street. Can you describe that and provide feedback for the hundreds of people here in terms of how to be a good mentee?
Yeah, the magic trick of mentorship is really simple. It's when the mentor and the mentee become peers. So instead of it being a one up, one down relationship, it's a peer relationship. I'll just personalize it. You said something about a mentor relationship with me. I'm learning as much from you as you're learning from me. I don't view it as a one up, one down dynamic. I view it as an engaged dynamic between the two of us with different frames of reference. And sometimes, you may have no idea that you just toss something out there that I'd never thought of before. And I may not be, in the moment say, hey, Dan, like this is new to me. Thank you so much for teaching me that. Like, that's not the dynamic. The dynamic is that both of you are learning from each other. And for me, there was a profound moment in my relationship with Len that taught me that, where I was at a dinner thing with him with a dozen other people. And I could hear out of the corner of my ear, he said to somebody, I'm learning more from Brad than he's learning from me. And I stopped the dinner, and I was having a different conversation. I turned to Len. I said, Len, that's bullshit. What are you talking about? Can you say that again? I don't understand what you mean. And he just, in front of the whole table, said, Brad, you don't get it. Like, the way that you're approaching some of these problems is so different than the way that I learned how to approach these problems, and different than the way that I thought about how to approach these problems. That it's just amazingly interesting to me. And I don't agree with everything you're doing, because the two of us would disagree and work through our disagreements regularly. He says, but yeah, the amount that I'm learning here in this relationship is substantial. And my response was, Len, like, I'm at the feet of the master here. Like, I'm learning how to do deals from somebody that I think is better at doing deals than anybody else on planet Earth. And, he had a low ego, so he sort of shrugged me away. But that's the essence. And I've had that experience over and over and over again with so many people. David Cohen, who's CEO of Techstars, we've been partners for a very long time now, 20 years we've been working together. There was for sure a period of time where my guess is David felt like he was probably learning more from me than the other way around. But when I look at each day and our interactions, it's unambiguously a peer relationship. That's what a mentee should be comfortable with. A mentee that shows up and says, I don't have any idea that what I, as a 22-year-old, have, to help this 60-year-old. The answer is, you see the world differently than I do. And I am interested in understanding how you see the world, because the future is your future, not my future. I mean, I'm going to, presumably die a lot sooner than you're going to die. And so I want to understand how you're thinking about the world. And I want to understand what matters to you. It doesn't mean that I agree with you, because, we have different frames of reference, but I can learn from that just as much as you can learn from me. So it's that essence. And it's not an ageist thing. It's an experience thing. It's a geography thing. It's a cultural thing. Like, my view is I can learn from anyone. And I want to engage with people who are interested in learning from me, but also willing to have me learn from them. That's the magic trick.
I think that relates also to the importance of active listening, which is also one of your tenets in the book. And I very much enjoyed all of our conversations to be able to think through how to build communities, create stronger mentorship programs, and be a better leader. So I'm very grateful for all the time that you've given us, including tonight, Brad. It really means a lot. You referenced David, and I really enjoyed learning about how Techstars was founded when he approached you early on. If you and David were starting Techstars today, what would you do differently?
We would do one thing very differently. And it wasn't at the start, but it was something that happened probably about a decade in, a little bit around there somewhere, which is we lost sight of a phrase that Walt Winchell, who was an early investor and mentor in Techstars, somebody who I knew from a previous company called Harmonics that we had both been angel investors in, They were the company that created Guitar Hero and Rock Band and had kind of an amazing journey that Walt was instrumental in many ways. And we became friends through that. He would say to me regularly, Brad, and he's sort of grumpy, gruff, older Jewish guy sort of language in Boston. Think of Boston, successful entrepreneur. Brad, better is better, not bigger is better. And he just say that to me over and over again, different contexts, but it would come up like better is better. And I think we lost sight at some point that better was better. Techstars had very, very significant scale and broad impact geographically around the world. And instead of focusing on making sure that everything we did every day was better for the one constituent that mattered, who were founders, because Techstars only exists to help founders be successful. There's no other real reason for it to exist. If founders are successful, all the investors, all the shareholders in Techstars are successful. All the startup communities that have these founders in become more successful. Like, it's a positive feedback loop if the founders are successful. I think we lost sight of better is better. And if we were starting over again, I think we would have engraved better is better in granite. And, we would have had to carry the tablets around with us everywhere we went for a while, just to really not lose sight of it. And it's hard in the entrepreneurial context, grow bigger, more. How much, have you done, and how many companies, and how many this and how many that? And what really mattered was better is better.
I really appreciate that. I think that that's an important note to end off this highly engaging fireside is, run your own race, take good care of yourself and the people around you, try to add value, try to help the next generation and your peers, and let's support each other as a community. And Brad, we're so grateful for you, for your wisdom, for writing these incredible books, and for creating such an incredible startup community that has inspired us at ChaiTech and will continue to. So we're incredibly grateful for you. And to the hundreds of you who joined us today from right across North America, let's keep building together with the ethos of Give First. We'll share the link in a follow-up email. We encourage everyone to purchase it. We will be sharing out a survey after this Zoom, and we're going to choose 20 people to gift his incredible book to. And we're all here to help each other, whether we're, as Brad mentioned, different ages, different parts of North America. Our community is enduring some unprecedented challenges, but I very much believe if we lean in and support each other through the ethos of Give First, both through building ventures and building community, we'll be just fine. So Brad, thank you so much again. And I'd love to call up Peter Rose, the Director of Philanthropy from the David Posnack JCC. And thank you very much again, Brad.
Thanks.
Hey, Dan. Good to see you too. Thank you for welcoming us in. That was amazing. Brad, if you're still listening, wow. My notepad is full, and a lot of this stuff was jotting it down and then checking off because I feel there's a lot of alignments in what I do, how I live, how we run our J, how we're there for our community and lifting each other up. So what a great fireside. So glad that I got to bear witness and to share a few moments right now, because we are excited at the David Posnack JCC to be one of the South Florida stops for ChaiTech coming up on December 18th. And I just hope that everybody who's enjoying today has the ability to join us. We'll have the registration opening soon. I know Dan will make sure to get that out to everybody, but it's going to be an amazing fireside chat, networking experience, bringing everybody together, truly a trailblazing event for our county, for our market, there for innovation, impact, inspiration, all hosted at our David Posnack JCC in conjunction with you and your team at ChaiTech. We're so happy to be bringing Davie out, CEO of United Hatsala, innovation and global. He's a global leader in life-saving technology, and we know it'll be an amazing event, not just for philanthropists. Being director of philanthropy, I always want to bring them in, but also for advocates of Israel, leaders in general, fans of cutting-edge technology. If you use AI in any form, it's going to be worth coming to check out. And we're just so grateful to be able to partner with you on this event.
Thank you so much, Peter. And we're all committed to creating stronger entrepreneurs, stronger mentors, which in turn will create stronger, more active philanthropists, right? So let's support each other.
Absolutely.
Let's build together, and really appreciate your partnership and your team. So we cannot wait for our first initiative together. And thank you for joining us this evening and for your supportive remarks. It means a lot. And for everyone else
Thank you.
who's joining us this evening, we very much welcome your ideas, your feedback. If you're interested in creating local high-tech events, our team is here to support you. It's all about coming together, uniting, uplifting, and upskilling Jewish startup founders. Now, I'm really excited to be able to share with you our upcoming Toronto-based event, which is actually happening in a few days. We're uniting Canadian and Israeli astronauts to uncover new ways of building, looking to the sky, and building a better tomorrow together. So we warmly welcome everyone to join us. If you can't join us live, please join us virtually. We're honoring an incredible ally in our community, John Ruffalo, who's the managing director and co-founder formerly of Omer's Ventures and now Mavericks Private Equity. And we're bringing together the Jewish community and many other diverse communities to engage, to get to know each other, to again uplift each other. And we're doing it through the theme of space tech. And next year we'll do sports tech, because Maccabi Games is joining us in Toronto, which we're all very much excited about. So continue to build with us, continue to engage, and would love to be able to encourage all of you to attend. So scan the QR code and please join us online or in person. So without further ado, I want to thank all of you for being here with us this evening, engaging with Brad, listening to his wisdom, his warmth, his inspiration. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. So lean into your community, engage with your peers, reach out to mentors, and let's build stronger startups and stronger communities right across North America. Laila Tov, and we'll see all of you soon. Thank you so much.